It's time for MacBreak Weekly. I'm back. Thanks to Micah Sargent for doing it last week. Now Alex Lindsay is out, but we do have Rene, Ritchie, and Andy Ihnatko. We will talk about the rumors. March 8th is the magic date. Apple quarterly results. I get to weigh in a little bit on that one. And, of course, Apple's response to the Dutch dating apps. It's all coming up. And, by the way, before I get into the show, I just want to ask you to help us out just a little bit by indulging in our annual survey. We do this every year as a way to get to know you better. It helps us sell advertising, but it also helps us plan programming so we can make your experience even better. It'll just take a few minutes. We do it once a year. And, of course, it's completely voluntary, but it would be much appreciated. Go to twit.tv/survey22 to take it. And thanks in advance. Now, on with the show.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
This is MacBreak Weekly, episode 804, recorded Tuesday, February 8th, 2022. Canadian Magic. MacBreak Weekly is brought to you by BetterHelp. Join over 1 million people who've taken charge of their mental health. As a listener, you'll get 10% off your first month by visiting betterhelp.com/MacBreak. And by New Relic. The next 9 p.m. call is just waiting to happen. Get New Relic before it does, and you can get access to the whole New Relic platform and 100 gigabytes of data free forever. No credit card required when you sign up at newrelic.com/MacBreak. It's time for MacBreak Weekly, the show where we cover the latest news from Apple. Alex Lindsay has the day off, heading to L.A. for something probably has to do with the Super Bowl, my guess. But we got Rene Ritchie here from youtube.com/Rene Ritchie. Hello, youtube.com/Rene Ritchie.
Hello, Leo Laporte. It is wonderful to have you back.
Good to see you. Oh, yes. Thank you, Micah, for filling in for me last week. I really appreciate it.
We love Micah, but we miss you.
Lisa and I took a day off, basically a couple of days off, and went down to Carmel by the Sea, which I'm happy to report is, in fact, by the sea. Andy Ihnatko is also here, WGBH Boston. Hello, Andrew.
Hello. I am also by the sea. I can confirm that we.
By the sea,
so basically, that's part of the service that TWiT that we offer. Occasionally, we will send a representative out to make sure that the West Coast is anchored and the East Coast is anchored by water. So
we are holding them down on each end with our big fat geek butts. Andy, actually, did the snow melt? Did you get a second storm? What's the situation there in New England?
Very, very light. It's like the last week or so we got the big storm.
Yeah.
Over here, it settled down to about 16 inches. Not far away, we got like 22, 20, something like that. But of course, because this is 2022 and not like 1982, and the climate is what it is, there is nothing. We used
to melt it.
Again, I hate to be one of those nostalgic folks, but it's like it used to be that like there'd be like a shipment of snow that would last you through like the rest of the winter through March, and now it's like no, it's a lease program. You get it. They brought it in for a photo shoot for about 4 or 5 days. You get to shoot your next Christmas card. You get a few good Instagram posts, but then boom, it's hysterical.
I ask if my mom is near you, and I always want to know. I talk to mom, of course, but I always want to know how she's doing and how's the weather and all that stuff.
Nope, it wasn't bad. We didn't even lose power. It was I bought all kinds of baking stuff, like just almost for no reason whatsoever. Because I thought that just in case we get snowed in for a couple of days, let's I'll have cookies, I'll have cakes. It'll be a festival, and unfortunately, it wound up. Unfortunately, the day after was a work
the inevitable murder.
Yeah.
Also with us, no, that's it. That's the two of you. It's the three of us today. That makes it easy. Big announcement. Couple of big announcements. Apple empowers businesses to accept contactless payments through Tap to Pay on the iPhone. You now have an iPhone payment device.
Cash register in your hand, Leo.
That's pretty cool.
That's interesting. It really is, but before it's not simple person to person payment. It's not as though you could simply walk up to somebody and then exchange money just by doing a tap of devices. What they're doing is they're eliminating all of these like Stripe devices where
it is
you have
a Stripe
to have a device
device
plugged in.
Well, that's the funny thing. They're going to use Stripe as the back end. By the way, Stripe is a sponsor. So.
Yeah. Well, actually, it's broader than that. Basically, they're saying that approved transactors like Stripe can have access to just use the hardware that's directly from one iOS device to another iOS device. So they don't. So if you already have an account with Stripe and you just bump into somebody in the village who says, "Oh wow, that's right. Can you come by and and redo my deck? Got a couple broken steps. Oh great, just to hear. I'll go down to Home Depot. Just give me like $100 or whatever for lumber, and you can just do the payment like phone to phone right there." So that's they're encouraging this as a sort of a more casual business relationship. Again, not a personal person-to-person transfer stuff. It's not going to be like how Apple Pay or like how PayPal is sometimes used.
Yeah, they already have Apple Pay, so you can you can do that. I pay my hair cutter with the Apple Pay, and it's
a farmer's market. Like you're there, you're selling your zucchinis, your tomatoes,
picture.
and you don't have a whole cash register. Yeah,
here's the picture at the farm. But see, this is what's cool, and I suspect that's who's going to use it is people who would be using Square or Stripe or some other. If you have Square, you have to have an iPad, and there's a whole process, and they tap their watch.
Although now they just don't need the Square dongle. Like they could still use Square. Like it might benefit Square from not having to make all that hardware. They can just be the transaction processor.
Yeah. It does. Yeah. It doesn't require Stripe. Stripe's the first to say we're going to be supporting it. In fact, I think they're already taking signups because it's not out yet, but it'll be out sometime.
Does this mean that Apple's going to magically start adding NFC to the future iPads? Because right now it's iPhone only.
Oh,
and I think a lot of people would love to have iPads.
What's interesting also to me is Apple could have done this at any time. I mean, the hardware was there, has been there for several generations, right?
Yes.
There was nothing stopping them from doing this.
Yeah. The hardware was there. Maybe just the infrastructure wasn't there. I mean, this isn't just like an iPhone to iPhone payment system. Like this is important enough to them that they actually have a news release on Newsroom. This isn't just something that you're just finding out as a part of a developer update. And part of the package that they're sending out is, hey, look, here's somebody at the farmer's market, like I said, with an actual just like tap to pay MasterCard, it's not just a phone to phone sort of thing. So I can't imagine what had to be done at the back end to make sure that this is actually going to work and that people are going to actually consider this to be trustworthy.
Is there that's the other question. Is there a security concern?
Well, not a concern, but they've baked it right into everything. So the transacts the same way that Apple Pay does. So through the secure element, and Apple doesn't get any access to any of your transactions.
Oh, that's interesting.
The other thing that's interesting to me is like the way that Apple's rolling this out.
It's not through Apple. It's through whoever the payment processor like Stripe that you're using. If it's also,
but it's
Apple
using the
says
hardware channel.
It works with Shopify's point of sale app as well. So Apple gets they don't get a cut and they don't get any visibility into it. That's interesting.
No, but I think that's calculated. I think that, in several jurisdictions, Apple is fighting over whether they have proprietary control over NFC. And that's something that some people are looking to regulate because you can't get like Samsung Pay on your iPhone. And a lot of developers didn't have access to NFC the way they do on Android. But also Apple has got Apple Cash and they've got Apple Pay in the US only. And this is US only as well. But having that sort of relationship, like Apple could do this themselves. But I think they're starting to be a little bit more tactical and strategic about how they see ownership of core technologies on iOS, and the financial one seems to be the one that they're doing that with first.
Very interesting. Once tap to pay iPhone becomes available, it says. So that's 15.2. What is it for?
Today's beta.
It's in today's beta.
Yeah, 0.2. Yeah.
Okay, good. Merchants will be able to unlock contactless payment acceptance through a supporting iOS app on an iPhone XS or later. So it really has been around. The capability, anyway, the hardware capability has been around for some time. At checkout, the merchant will simply prompt the customer to hold their iPhone or Apple Watch to pay with Apple Pay. Apple Pay's had a big boost from COVID, hasn't it? I use touchless now all the time. That's suddenly
in the US,
nobody wants in the US. Nobody wants money. Yeah. They say, "Don't touch me, man."
Yep.
Just go, and so I think
you've become Europe and Canada, Leo.
Do you not have it?
Exactly.
No, we've been like that for like 20 years.
Oh, I see.
Like, we've
with
been
your credit
contactless
cards
for 20 years, and so is Europe. Yeah.
With your credit
and with
cards.
Apple Pay, like I remember they had Singleton once, and I picked up a bunch of Apple people from the airport and brought them there, and I tapped to pay for gas on the way, and they're like, "What is that, Canadian magic?" Like, no, this is how the rest of the world
Canadian magic.
Lives.
That's what we call it.
And it's still weird because like you go to the US and you put out your credit card and they take it and they leave with it. And you're like, what is happening?
I know. I hate that.
Yeah.
Apple Pay, Apple says, is already accepted at more than 90% of U.S. retailers. That's incredible penetration.
Yeah, that's about contactless payments as a whole.
Usually you get Apple Pay and Android Pay.
Yeah, you realize that the hysterically funny thing is that banks in the United States have always had have always been running the numbers and said that whatever fraud retailers suffer as a result of insecure mag swipes and just handing over the card, it costs us a lot less than actually having to update all the terminals, update all the software, also do all the retraining we need to do for all of our customers in order to make that work. And they've always been just simply willing to pay the fees. And also, I saw another report that said that they're actually making more money off of the fees that they were charging retailers to cover losses actually exceeded the amount of losses that they were suffering due to fraud. So there were a couple of reasons why there wasn't a whole lot of incentive for banks to switch all of their payment platforms over to contactless payments. But it's one of those things where I'm sure all of you had the same thing. Like the first time that oftentimes we got contactless payment devices before the people behind the registers did, and like you see the little symbol on the new kiosk on the new terminal that got installed on the Walgreens.
Yeah.
Like what did you just do? Like I just paid with my phone.
That's
how
Canadian
does that work?
Magic.
Yeah, exactly.
One of my best experiences was I walked into. I forget what it was. It was at the airport, and I went and I just tapped my watch, and they're like, "What is that?" And the thing went beep, and it worked. They said, "What is that?" I said, "I paid with my watch." And then the next time I came through, the same woman I was speaking to held up her watch with this giant smile on her face.
Cute. Yeah, so I would guess by now everybody knows, and it's no longer magic. Canadian Magic will also work with credit cards, however. Apple says, tap to pay on iPhone, which I'm going to call TTPOI from now on. No, I'm not. I'm not. We'll work with contactless credit and debit cards, including Amex, Discover, MasterCard, and Visa. So is that, if I have a chipped card, is that contactless, or is there something special additional?
Yeah, well, I think you need the little symbol, the little Wi-Fi symbol on it.
Oh, you need a Canadian Magic symbol?
Yes.
Now I have to
But I wonder
look.
if it'll work with Android devices that can project payments as though they're a credit card, because it sort of has to, right? I don't think there's any way that
Samsung, that's a Samsung thing where it acts like a mag stripe. Right?
No, this wouldn't be a
Is that what
mag
you're
reader,
talking
but it would be like acting like a
RF.
credit card projector.
So Apple's own card does not have any magic symbols on it. Do you
No,
think
it doesn't have
would-
any symbols on it, Leo. It's an Apple
Do you
card.
think it would work? Oh, I love that sound. by
Can
the
you
way.
contactless pay with an Apple card? I don't know. They don't have that in Canada. See, it's really interesting that the
He's
U.S.
throwing
is
his
such a
credit cards
competitive
all over the
banking.
studio.
It's such a competitive banking environment that they can find banks and institutions that will do all of this with them, where other countries have oligopolies that they want nothing to do with Apple. They don't need premium cards. They don't feel like they have to offer us anything. So in most of the world, none of these things exist.
Look, this Amex card. You can't see the number.
Don't show the number.
You can't see the
Don't
number.
show the number.
No, go ahead, John. You can't see the number. I'm covering the only number you could see, but it has a little. It looks like a Wi-Fi thing. That's the. There it is. That's the touch to pay, huh? I'm covering up the only number that's on the front, except the fact that I have been a customer since 1980, which just basically says this has.
And you're known as LG Laporte.
Might as well be 80 years. 1980.
Your first purchase was a Bay City Rollers album.
hey, do les rum. Hey,
Is LG Laporte your author name?
I don't know why American Express decided to call me LG Laporte. I think that was a.
It's LG Laporte. He's visiting from the channels.
My Visa signature card does not have that, but my business card does, so that's good. So
all my cards have it.
Well, of course, because you have Canadian Magic on your side.
Magic, that's true.
We here in America do things the old-fashioned way.
America.
We got those things where you go chick, and they put the.
Oh, but you have these you have Apple Card, you have Apple Cash, you have all these things. The rest of the world does not.
You don't have an Apple Card?
I'm not bitter.
We don't have
a
all of our
banking
truckers though, so it's okay.
No, we only have the Q. We only have the Q and the supremacy truckers.
You got the cuckoo truckers. You can't
have them back.
You can't hear them all the way in Montreal, right?
You can have. They tried. They got confused by the lack of English road signs on their way.
Well, this is Francais. I'm LG Laporte of the Providence Laportes. That's right.
Providence.
Providence. The Newport Laportes. Anyway, that's good. You know, it's interesting that Apple has had this capability since the XS. Took them, what does that mean? It took them 3 or 4 years to do this, but they did it. And so that's exciting. Now, if you're in the Netherlands, it's not so exciting, and it's really interesting.
Before you go on, maybe it's what you said. Maybe it is COVID that has increased the demand for contactless payment, and Apple saw an opportunity in the most recent years. Yeah.
Oh, it's the best thing that could have happened to Apple Pay.
Yeah.
In fact, I mean, if you really want to globalize, it's the best thing that ever happened to technology. All the tech companies have vastly increased in value thanks to quarantine. It's been a very good thing for the tech sector. Not so
bad
much
for our
so,
psychology, good for our technology.
So much so for us. Or restaurants. I can't believe the number of restaurants and small businesses that are just gone, blasted off.
We lost the franchises where we got a bunch of mom and pops that I'm really happy about because they're all cooking authentic food. It's not just another burger coming off a shelf.
Good. Yeah, a couple of the big franchises are suffering here in the United States.
Yeah.
Like the world famous Applebee's, where everything's microwaved, whether you want it or not.
We lost Taco Bell. They quit the promise. Last month. Yep.
Oh no, that's not okay. Jeff Jarvis is never going to go to Canada then.
But we have real Taco Bell. We have real Mexican restaurants now, which we didn't have before. There's like 3 of them opened.
Yeah. Actually, isn't that it's so funny? Here we are in California, where you would think, obviously, no one's going to go to Taco Bell. In fact, the best taco truck in town is right across the street from Taco Bell. And nevertheless, there's a long line around the block to get Doritos tacos or something, whatever it is.
Probably made with crack.
Yeah, something.
100% pure.
My usual Wednesday morning diner with a couple of friends closed down, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's so sad.
I'm sorry.
That one really
you
hurt
loved that diner. Was that the one you always talk about?
Yeah.
Oh,
and
I'm sorry.
The good news is that after some months on the market, it got bought. And fortunately, because this is like a really authentic, 1960s diner, like a gleaming metal, beautiful inside. My fear was that someone's just going to knock it down and put something boring there. And so it's no longer a diner. It's like a come in, get a cup of coffee, get a pastry, leave sort of place. But again, Ihnatko, nothing gold can stay.
Yeah.
Sigh.
Like Dutch dating apps.
Okay, Dutch dating apps. You brought it up. It's not my fault. Wow, there is some salt in the air over this whole thing.
Oh, God.
So the Dutch, in case
it's the Mr. Burns of law departments.
In case you missed the previously on MacBreak Weekly, Apple was instructed by Netherlands regulators to offer alternative payment systems to Dutch dating apps. We're still a little
only dating apps.
Only dating apps.
Yeah.
And Apple, had given no alternative, although I think they were fined. Said, okay. 5 million euros.
5 million euros a week for not for violating. Yeah.
Pocket change. So Apple did respond in a way that not only must have irritated Dutch regulators, although they haven't said anything yet, it seems to have irritated people like Stephen Troughton-Smith and Marco Arment, who flipped them the digital bird on Twitter over this.
Wait a minute, is Twitter the digital bird?
The digital bird, and it was flipped. It done been flipped. Apple said, okay, fine. And I think they said it just like that. Fine.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Fine.
Here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna give you a 3% discount because it turns out roughly the amount of money the credit card fees would be. So you only pay 27%. We'll be billing you for that, of course.
Yeah, the fees for Apple, not for developers, by the way. Apple gets a good deal on those process fees.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So, in fact, this may end up costing developers more because if they want to put their own store in and have to pay credit card fees to other companies, it could be 4 or 5%. Anyway.
Yeah, 6 even.
So and there's so many, it's so onerous. You have to create a separate app just for that. And you have to request a StoreKit external purchase entitlement or the StoreKit external purchase link entitlement.
You have to wear an embarrassing hat.
You have to wear a funny hat.
Really?
And blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so Apple responded, but it's like paying your bill, your utility bill with pennies. It's one of those kind of like, up yours.
That's true. Like we saw this with the Korean place too. Like Google offered 4% off in Korea. Apple's offering 3%, and it feels like there's an utter desperation to make sure that they understand that they ascribe zero value to the credit card transaction processing, and that everything else that they provide in their environment, that is the 27 or 12%. Thank you very much.
And if Alex Lindsay were here, I will channel him. He would say they're right. But, that's all you need to know about that. Stephen Troughton Smith, this is his tweet, absolutely vile. This says everything about Tim Cook's Apple and what it thinks of developers. I hope the company gets exactly what it deserves. Everybody on their executive team should be ashamed. Some of them should not be here when it's all over. We all see you. Yeah. Wow. Marco Arment wrote, you can just feel how much they despise having to do any of this. And I'm not sure I think Stephen may be a little strong, but Marco is factual. You can feel how much they despise doing this. I don't know what the Dutch regulators' response is going to be.
Another 5 million.
Another 5 million euros, I guess.
Yeah. They were already upset after the original judgment. I think 2 weeks ago they said that Apple claimed to the government that we are complying with this order, and they said no, you just said that you're figuring out how you're going to do it. That is not equating. That's not the same thing as actually doing it, and that's what precipitated this incredibly mature and even-handed. This is
they're going to get their 5 million euros in pennies. I can tell you right now.
No, exactly. It's like this has got to be the dumbest. This is like asking like a 6-year-old child, "Did you brush your teeth?" And they said yes. And he said, "Okay, I can smell your breath." And he said, "Oh well, you didn't say did I brush my teeth tonight?" Like, oh God, do I really have to do this?
Marco says after you take your roughly 3% payment processor, Apple's 27% commission takes you right back up to 30%. Glorious. Come on, Marco says. This is comedy. Amazing, ridiculous comedy. I'd be surprised if a single app ever took them up on this, and that's exactly
That's the whole point, though.
That's the point.
Yeah. But the also thing is that the Dutch regulator said that Apple had to let them have both options, and Apple's answer was, well, they can choose one or the other, and the Dutch goes, we have a very different understanding of the word both.
Both.
Right.
So 5 million euros, this is the third week now they're going to be paying the 5 million euros, which, again, given Apple's spectacular revenue, and we're going to get to that, isn't really...
it just seems so odd because Apple is usually really good at understanding markets and understanding what like a minimal delightful product is on a market. And obviously that's not their intent here.
Well,
but
they
just
must think
you look at South Korea, you look at Japan, you look at... this is a global problem, and it is stupefying to me that they have not gotten out ahead of this, that they're not only so far behind it, but they're dragging their feet like a dead corpse along the way. It just doesn't seem like good strategy.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. If they think that this is just some one little freakish government with this weird dictator that's just making this off the top of their head demand that no one else is, and that's not a problem anyplace else, and they can just simply fight this out, this is something they're going to have to change how they do business worldwide. They're going to, and not only that, but they will not be able to continue to do business worldwide. They're going to have to do business individually with individual countries, adapting to individual laws. Yeah, and exactly. To say nothing of state regulators, if federal legislation in the United States doesn't come aboard, and this is why I get really, really upset / disappointed with Apple is how disingenuous and how casually disingenuous they are, that when it comes down to, hi, Apple, I noticed that you pulled down all apps in this country that will give the users of iPhones in that country some defense over inhumane and onerous surveillance by the government that allows the government to control their lives. It's like, oh gosh, what can we do? We have to comply with every single law in all the countries in which our app stores, we can't do anything about it. We can't do anything. But you ask them to do something that affects their bottom line, that is fundamentally something they don't want to do, and they will just basically flip the bird at this government, and they will just simply say, great, make us. We can continue to fine us €5 or €6 a week. See how long like our war chest for fighting this lasts against your government's ability to keep the appeals process going.
All right, I'm going to channel Alex Lindsay briefly. Hold on. Apple doesn't care what Dutch regulators or developers of Dutch dating apps or whatever think. Apple cares what the users want and their position.
Sorry.
Now I know why Alex is mad at you.
I promised Alex I wouldn't do that. I didn't promise you I wouldn't do that.
Okay. Well, but I'm gonna channel Rumsleg here and say this is for the benefit of the users, and Apple really, and you know what, there's some merit in that. Apple shouldn't really care that much. Developers are still getting a good deal compared to what Ingram Micro charged when you had to shrink wrap software, and Apple wants to make the users happy, and users,
I would argue
it's easier for users just to go through Apple.
Well,
I would argue that it's ultimately not a successful strategy. It's not a strategy that can win for them. And what's going to happen is all these laws are going to pop up, like Andy was saying, on a state-by-state, region-by-region basis. And it's going to be a nightmare, not just for Apple, but for end users. Right now, there's a unified store that when you travel, when you live in different places, it doesn't matter. Everything just works the way it works, except it is already broken because Apple doesn't let you make in-app transactions for digital goods via the web. So you still got to do that stupid dance, which is not in the benefit of users going to websites and things like that. And Apple has an opportunity here, because things are changing so rapidly on a global stage, to be ahead of it, to think of a solution that's not rooted in 2008 when, this was all brand new and they could make an app console and that really was for the best. They have a chance here to really modernize how all of this works. And it just seems like they're not seizing that opportunity, that they're protecting services revenue and the control of the App Store in spite of both themselves and the customer, and not even mind developers. Developers are always third or fourth on the list, but just in spite of themselves and the customers.
Yeah.
So, but the point is well taken that customers don't really care about this, right? I mean, the Apple users are begging for another way to pay.
Yeah. I would just quickly say that I think that making the customer happy is another area in which Apple is not always, but often disingenuous, in which, again, ask them to make a choice that helps the customers, but again, affects their bottom line or will affect their strategy going forward as a company, and we'll see exactly how much they actually care about the customer. I just don't think that's a good catch-all to justify what they do. I mean, my basic argument has always been that if Apple wants to say that the way that they run the App Store without really any challenge whatsoever is best for the customers, best for the developers, best for the industry, that's fine. But it's absolutely appropriate for a government agency or an independent agency to say, great, prove it. Give us the numbers. Explain why this is so. Don't just simply say we are a $2 or $3 trillion company. We don't have to do anything we don't want to, and therefore we're not going to. Yeah. This is why I encourage this sort of thing. I think this is a positive thing, and we have seen in the past 3 or 4 years changes in the App Store that wouldn't have come if it had not been for this sort of external pressure.
Well, I'm going to take a Doritos Loco and a Baja Blast break right now, and we will come back. Nice. And it was a very good quarter for Apple. We'll talk about those numbers. And, we're not here buying stocks or, financial gurus. We're here to take a look at those numbers and say what it means for Apple and Apple.
It was good for Apple, Google, and not Facebook.
Yeah. Yeah. I never thought I'd say poor Facebook. Now they're saying to European regulators, maybe Apple should do this. You know what? You keep pushing us. We're gonna take our ball and go home.
Yeah.
Well, that's data repatriation. Bye. That's like a whole.
See ya. And then
that's a whole other kettle of worms.
And then the EU parliamentarians say, Well, that would be a good thing. We don't like Facebook either.
Can you take Rupert Murdoch with you?
Really, yeah. Do you really want the whole statement that they were making during their quarterly report is that we're fighting for people's attention. There's so much competition, not only in social media.
Yeah.
We're trying to fight against TikTok. It's like, oh, great. So why don't you pull out of all these markets? See if you leave behind any sort of a vacuum that's not going to be immediately filled, and you're going to lose this completely. Go ahead, give us a try. We would love it.
Like Google in China.
That'll be fun. Yeah.
If all of this is making you feel a little bit anxious, can I recommend our sponsor, BetterHelp? I love this sponsor because they are helping people feel better. And gosh knows there couldn't be a more challenging time than our own modern times. If something's preventing you from achieving your goals or frustrating you or interfering with your happiness, BetterHelp, BetterHelp.com/MacBreak. What is it? Well, BetterHelp will help assess your needs and then match you with your own licensed professional therapist. You can connect in a safe, private online environment. It's so convenient. You can get started within 48 hours, which is nice. It's not a crisis line. I want to emphasize that. That's not, there are other places to go for that. But this is for the kind of thing that many of us, I'll include myself, really think is a valuable thing to do. It's not self-help. It's not crisis help. It's professional counseling done online and done securely and done in a way that fits your needs. So, for instance, you don't want video, you don't have to have video. It could just be phone sessions. The counselor, you're not clicking, no problem. They make it very easy for you to keep going until you find somebody you like. They understand that that's an important part. They make it easy and free to change counselors as needed. Sometimes what happens is you spend a few weeks with one person, you got a lot out of it, now you want to try a different approach. Sometimes it's just not a click. You got to find, it's always been the case, the right counselor for you, and they make that very easy. Although I have to say, my experience has been you also may get that click right away. It's much more affordable than traditional offline counseling. They even have financial aid, and it's global, worldwide. So you don't have to limit yourself to the three counselors down the block. You can find the expertise you need in a whole bunch of different areas. What I love about it, it's not just weekly appointments. You can send a message to your counselor anytime. You'll get timely and thoughtful responses. You can, of course, have weekly sessions. Never have to sit in a waiting room. Never have to, if it's uncomfortable for you to tell people you're doing this, it's totally private, which is nice. You'll find licensed professional counselors specializing in pretty much every area of mental problems, depression, stress, anxiety. And by the way, no shame in feeling these. We're all feeling this, especially right now. Relationship help, sleeping, trauma, anger, family conflicts. Yes, they have experts in LGBTQ matters, in grief. Look, if you're suffering from the loss of a loved one, even if it was years ago, there's no reason to suffer. It's not an abandonment of their memory or it just helps you process it. It's important. Self-esteem. A lot of us have self-esteem issues. It's really great. Of course, anything you share is confidential. It's convenient. It's professional. These are licensed therapists, and it's affordable. Check out the testimonials on the site if you have any questions at all. And of course, I know many people who've used BetterHelp and have had some great results in kind of unusual, unexpected ways. There's great advice, great suggestions for things, action items. So many people now are using BetterHelp. So many of us need BetterHelp. They are recruiting counselors in all 50 states. If you are a licensed professional and you want to take advantage of this platform, please, BetterHelp.com/MacBreak. I want you to start living a happier life today. I don't want you to suffer. There's no need to. Look, we all want you to feel better now. That's why we've got a 10% off discount on your first month. All you have to do is go to BetterHelp.com/MacBreak. 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 1 million people now have taken charge of their mental health by going to BetterHelp, BetterHelp.com/MacBreak. These are tough times. It's okay to acknowledge that. How were the Doritos Loco? Were they good? The Baja Blast.
They were crunchy.
Do you have Taco Bell in
I'm now in a
Canada?
food coma. We do. They're just closing here in Quebec. They were here for
that's what
maybe
you
10
said.
years.
Yeah.
Yeah. They were in the back of Kentucky Fried Chicken. Every KFC got a Taco Bell in the back for a while.
Wow. That's right. They're both owned by Pepsi.
Yeah, I believe Pepsi and Coco and everything. There's really only two companies.
Really
left in
only
the
two
world.
companies. And in fact, this may be a disappointment to some of you, but there's really only two big fat pipes. And it's all made out of the same stuff. Just comes out the pipe. Yeah. No,
one just gets branded Coke, one gets branded
that's
Pepsi,
it.
One has more salt, one has more sugar. That's about it.
That's about it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jason Snell. You know, we should have had Jason on today, come to think of it. I guess we didn't have time to get Jason lined up, but he does this every year. I love it, every quarter. But this is now the annual report, I guess, because Apple has now reported in with its quarterly results for the past quarter, and that makes it for the year. Here's his 2021 Apple report card. Now, this is not from the financial numbers. This is by querying Apple watchers. I bet, Rene, you're one of them he queries.
I was, but I missed the email this year.
Oh, God. How embarrassing.
My email became, after I left Mobile Nations, my email got completely annihilated, and I missed
Jason,
so I apologize to Jason.
I can help you.
No, he does everything right. It's just me.
Yeah.
I was a failure point.
He never asked me, but that's all right.
No, he does everything wrong, but no.
He never asked me. Apple report card average scores, Mac #1. And I think you'd have to say in the M1 era and the Apple Silicon era, Apple Macs are amazing. Hardware reliability, #2. iPhone, #3. Wearables, #4, which is ironic. That's more looking ahead, I guess, because all the wearables are right now are, I guess, watches and iPods count. AirPods count. iPad. Well, see, watch has its own category. Services, software quality, not quite as good as hardware reliability. Environmental and social impact. It's interesting how low that's ranked.
Well, hardware got the post-butterfly boost, Leo.
Yes. Post-butterfly, post-track touchpad thing. Apple TV kind of down there. Dev relations, definitely suffering. But the most neglected item on the Apple report card, HomeKit. Whatever happened to that? Yeah. Let's see. Did he do his quarterly results report card too? I'm going to have to see if I can find the color charts, because I love those color charts.
His amazing set of scripts. Every time we praise him for doing this, it's just a set of scripts. It takes like 9 minutes. Like, okay.
In a way, that's more impressive, right? How many of us think, oh gosh, I do this all the time. I really should automate it, and never do. So the fact that he did is awesome. 6 colors, charts. Apple did have its quarterly results last week. Am I not wrong?
A couple of weeks ago was the 20.
The week before.
Did you guys already do
here
this?
last week?
You already did.
We did the Apple results, but not the Snell results.
Well, here's the Snell results. Good. All right, good. So there's something left for me. It was a good quarter. $81 billion, right? iPhone, almost half, but not quite, which is interesting. Services, really big. I have to say, though, there should be an asterisk on services, because a significant portion of that is a check from Google, which I don't.
And the App Store.
Well, App Store, I think that counts, right? But
well, it's like when Apple says they have so many subscribers, that includes like App Store subscribers.
Right.
I believe. Like the whole App Store is a big distortion.
Yeah, everybody who has an app, iPhone has the App Store, right? Or a Mac. Apple revenue looked pretty good in Q3, $81 billion, but should it be higher?
They're one of the.
Isn't this the big selling quarter? The big new iPhone quarter we were talking about?
A holiday quarter?
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's look at profit. 21 billion. That's nice too.
And they're returning so much of it to
I see. You know what? This big thing is the yearly result. Okay.
Yes.
So I shouldn't. That's that big chunk there. They should just, because these are all quarterly, so it's apples to apples. The black line is what really matters. That's the 4-quarter average, and obviously Apple is revenue through the roof, going
and
really
services
well.
are throwing margins through the roof too, because software and services revenues are so much higher than hardware revenues.
Their total margin, right? Revenue up 36% for the quarter. There's that purple services thing in there. Just for those of you listening, we're just looking at 6colors.com. Jason's
very
charts.
beautiful graphs.
Yeah. Wait a minute. This is the wrong quarter. Gosh darn it. All right, just erase everything you just heard. I forget it. I hate myself. I take one day off, one lousy day off, and I'm
one lousy show, and
I'm shot to hell. I guess has he not
it
done
was a good quarter. They made good. They made more money than companies that oligopoly control over fossil fuel resources.
I guess he hasn't done the charts yet. Maybe
it was 2 weeks ago.
So 123 billion almost 124 billion in revenue. Sorry. That's why that explains to me, because an iPhone was a huge part of that. I got the whole thing wrong.
Yeah.
Editors, just take that whole chunk out. Hey, here are Jason Snell's. Literally, I guess my brain just rotted while I was gone. You already did all this.
I didn't notice the difference either, Leo, because it's so much money. Like
it's just so much money. At this point, it's all blurry, isn't it? We don't care. There's the big bar I expected. $123 billion in revenue.
All the money.
Highest ever. Profit. Whoa! $34 billion in profit. That's nice. There's bigger.
The reason Macs have so much RAM now is for Tim Cook's pivot tables. That's the real reason.
Yeah. Anything, but again, this is money. We don't care about money. We care about products and services. Anything to be gleaned from this? It was a good year for iPhone. It was probably a good year for services.
It was just that they're still feeling like where Apple is feeling the crunches in the legacy nodes, which are the large process nodes. They're still everything that they're making themselves with TSMC is going fine, but they're starting to have to pick and choose what parts go to iPhones and what parts go to iPad minis. So there are shortages on the less popular comparatively products than Apple would like, but it looks like they're not getting a handle on it, but they're able to move stuff around as needed to fulfill most of the demand, which will probably last for another 2 years.
So you already talked about all of this, and I apologize. I forgot that I was even gone last week. So
honestly, if you take a couple days off and you're right back in the thick of it, when you come back, did you really leave it all?
That's a good point. I should be foggy. I should say, what are we talking about? What's going on?
The fog of vacation.
Micah was smart. He left it out of the rundown. I'm the one who went out and said, "Oh, we should look at this." Sorry about that. Sorry.
But there are a couple of one thing that I don't think we hit upon is that if we talked about the money, of course, because money. But one of the other nice things, especially compared to the failure of the of the class of Facebook, one of Facebook's biggest downers was that number of active users actually went down, which implies that they have found everybody that they're ever going to sign up for Facebook. They have found all the customers they can, and you compare and contrast this to Apple, where the numbers and the guidance they were offering in this document and the Q&A afterward was speaking about how we are continuing to make gains, and we have the countries in which Apple products and services are doing exceptionally well. We continue to actually gain in markets that we started focusing full attention on 5 or 6 or 7 years ago, meaning that there's still more sources of revenue yet to come. For me, the most fun part is always the Q&A when the analysts get to actually ask questions, because this is one of the few times in which a CEO and an executive team is legally required by the SEC not to lie. Tim Cook was asked directly about the metaverse, and he parried nicely just by saying, talking about, we've got 14,000 AR apps in the App Store. We continue to look at this, and we're investing accordingly. So if you're looking for,
do you think he was hiding his real interest, because he's been saying AR, but that sounds like he's saying, those are the apps, we did it, and that's not what anybody's thinking.
I'm wondering if he was trying to not give heat to Meta, to Facebook about this. I think that I think he wants to do AR/VR the way that Apple wants to do it, and not necessarily be seen as not hitch their wagon to a pipe dream that might be delivered in 5 or 10 years, or might just simply be bought out as part of Facebook's assets when the company's liquidated.
Speaking of Facebook,
Yeah, and I think there's two other.
Oh, go ahead.
I think there's two other quick things about that. One is that, to Andy's point, I don't think Apple wants to be seen as following Facebook in any way, shape, or form. They don't want to give them any mind share control over this. They don't even want the word meta. Like they don't say cyberspace or information superhighway. They don't want to play any of those games. But also, they have a fundamental disagreement with how that future is going to unfold, where Facebook wants that helmet on our head so that they can own our lives. Like he loves Ready Player One, doesn't understand that he's the bad guy, and that like Facebook and like he really thinks that he's just an app in a browser, like just a web page in a browser, just an app on a phone, and he doesn't want that. He wants to be the world that we live in. Yeah. Where Apple looks at it like, we don't want you to live in this stuff. We think that would be super bad. We just want you to come in, watch a movie, play a game, look at maps, do that kind of stuff, and then go on about your life. We're fine selling you that shiny headset. We don't need to buy our toilet paper above your kid's school. That's just a different game from us.
Yeah, well, they don't need it because they don't need the revenue. But on the other hand, they do everything they can to make sure that you live La Vida Apple. I mean, they, lock in. I mean, people are going crazy now over this. What is it? I can never remember the name of it. The handoff continuity where you move the mouse. And of course,
universal control.
Universal control because you need an iPad and a Mac, and you don't need a mask, face recognition if you've got an Apple Watch. I mean, Apple's doing everything they can to keep you living in the ecosystem.
But there's a difference between they want you to live in the world, but always have an Apple product at your hand while you do so.
Right.
So, and also they're such.
It's just a different business model. Their money's made selling hardware.
Exactly. Yeah, and also Apple, I don't think Apple has ever, not since the Newton message pad, has Apple ever done the sort of thing where we think that this is an interesting idea, we're going to put this out there and hope that it becomes like a money magnet, that people just simply see it, realize that, oh my God, where has this thing existed in all my life until this point? They wait to make sure that people actually want this thing, that there's a future for this thing, and then they actually release this thing.
That's
Meta,
interesting.
who the hell knows what they're doing?
Yeah, that's an interesting point.
There's also a fundamental difference in the relationship. Like Apple feels like we walk into this place, I give you money, you give me a thing, we're kind of settled. Where Google's like, I walk into this place, I can have this thing, and then they might glare at me a little bit, but the relationship is more or less under my control. I can give them back whatever I want. Facebook feels like you walk into this place, they'll give you an unlimited buffet, but you got to eat it naked while being examined. And that's like a completely different relationship than the other two. But it's true though. Like they're upset. Well, we were talking about like Facebook's warning about the EU, and the reason that they're doing that warning is because the EU is increasingly about data repatriation, similar to what China wants. But we have different political dynamics with them. They want Facebook's data to stay in the EU, and they don't want Facebook in the US to operate on that data. And Facebook is saying, but operating on that data is our raison d'etre, to put it like
that's
the
how
European
we make
languages
money
that you'll understand.
Yeah,
and that is literally like. Again, you get like Google will give you a lobster dinner and they'll leer at you, but you get to make your own decisions. Facebook really wants you naked and being examined while you're eating that lobster.
What a great analogy.
But that also brings up an interesting point that and these guidance reports, they're also supposed to talk about headwinds. That's why Facebook just tanked so badly, because they were talk about nothing but headwinds. And even Google only slightly glanced at how they might find themselves having some difficulties in the future dealing with new regulations and also existing regulations. I mean, the GDPR is having such huge effects, even a time later. Just recently, the EU handed down a finding that Google fonts on websites violates GDPR, because when a visitor opens a website and this free font is downloaded from Google to display the web page correctly, that is transmitting information about the viewer of that web page back to Google. And so it's I wonder at what point this is going to become so onerous that just as Tim Cook was talking time and time again about chip constraints during the entire call, they're going to have to talk about, we don't know how we can do. We're going to have to revamp our payment system here. We're going to have to revamp our app store here. We're going to have to figure out how we can actually run our transparency service, because we've built it so that we can prove to ourselves and to our users that we're protecting users' privacy. We did not build it so that we can prove to the UK or to France or to Australia that we're protecting users' privacy. This is going to become a bigger issue as we go along.
Speaking of Facebook, they blamed Apple for their Apple are the headwinds. They said Apple's IDFA checkbox on the iPhone is going to, they say, anticipate cost them $10 billion for next quarter. I'm going to...
Oh, wait, it's year. Apple? It's not users choosing to deny them that data?
And honestly, I'm going to call foul on that because I think Facebook doesn't... We've seen many studies that show that Facebook has plenty of other ways to get that information. Yeah. All that checkbox does is say you can't have the IDFA. That doesn't. There's lots of other things Facebook could do.
But it's a fundamental difference in viewing the universe. Like Facebook really believes that it's their data, that it's not our data, that we're doing things on the internet, and that doesn't belong to us, that belongs to them.
Right.
And they've gone so far, like they bought WhatsApp based on spying on iOS and Android users' other activities. They bought that VPN and deployed it with an enterprise certificate based on the idea that they deserve to know that everything we were doing on the device. They truly don't believe that we have the right to determine who we share our data with. And their entire business is built around that philosophy, which they're being told a hard no to now, increasingly from other companies and regulators. And they might have, absolutely, they could get this stuff in other ways. I don't think they thought that they should. I think that they have real massive entitlement issues they're dealing with right now.
Yeah, they also actually addressed this, and they said that they didn't say that, oh my God, we don't know what to do. They said that we're rewriting basically how we do tracking, and that's going to take us a couple of years to figure out. The more sensational thing they said was that they were complaining that they felt as though they were being singled out unfairly because that means that the Facebook app can't get access to, because it's an app that runs on iOS, can't get access to the stuff. However, they were also mentioning that, well, but Google is not facing the same problems because they've got this sweetheart deal with Apple, and I forget the exact language they used, but they said until this favoritism ends, we're going to be dealing with this problem, and Google is not.
Yeah. It's a little bit whiny though. Do you really think it hurt them?
They made a choice.
Going to hurt them that much?
They made a choice. Unlike Google, Google is so smart. Like compared to Facebook, they are so ingenious because they had this feeling. They grew up when Microsoft owned the internet, and part of the whole debacle around IE and Chrome was that, and with Android and iOS, was that they didn't want to leave their hands the control of mobile search to Microsoft. But they didn't just complain about it. They went out, they made a mobile operating system, they made a browser. And now even if a lot of stuff gets turned off, they still have access to that via the operating system and via the browser. Where Zuckerberg hired the same people. He poached the second in charge of Android, Eric Tsang. He did all, but then he kept maybe we'll do it. I don't know. We'll partner. We'll make a cha-cha with HTC. And they never did anything. So now they're in this point of complete dependency. And I think that's why they're so desperate for Metaverse, because that would give them the ownership that Google already has.
See, I don't take it quite as face value. I think that Mark's saying, "Good, we can pretend we don't know anything about them because of Apple. Oh, ooh, woe is me." Meanwhile, continue to collect all the data we're collecting anyway. Snap kind of pulled the curtain aside because they had their first profit ever, and they said, Apple's privacy we figured out a way around it. They say it will take time to fully adapt. I honestly think these companies are using it, to be honest with you, more than really hurt by it. I think they don't want to admit how much they already know. Facebook tracks you all the time, everywhere you go, thanks to like buttons, and I just feel like they don't...
Deals with data brokers.
They've got plenty of information.
They're so good at it. We think that they're listening to us on the microphone, even though all evidence to the contrary, they are so good at it. Everyone believes that.
Yeah. So you're those Instagram ads, but I was talking about goldfish just the other day, and all of a sudden I'm getting goldfish ads. I think this is really a magician's trick. It's saying, they're killing us. Meanwhile, keep giving us that data, boys. Keep giving us that data. I don't buy it. Yeah. But anyway.
No, you're absolutely right, and they were in profit. And the thing is, this is a nice smokescreen for the larger industry, where Amazon had their results, and oh my God, they're making so many billions of dollars off their ad network. It's just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Yeah. It's one thing to be able to say that, well, gosh, this person searched for this item here after reading this article there, then went to this store there. It's another thing to have a list of here's what people were searching for in a store. Here's what what they looked at before they looked at this other thing, and here's what they looked at before they actually made the purchase. They made
Google even knows if you just use a credit card, they buy the data back, and they know that you use the credit card. They even said this. They offered to advertisers. We could, by the way,
it ties
verify.
to a physical address.
Yeah,
because you placed an order.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think Apple's doing a lot to protect privacy. I'm glad they are, including anonymizing Apple Pay payments. But I'm not going to shed a tear for Facebook or Google or anybody else because of it. I think they're finding ways around it perfectly well, and they would like to pretend they're not. Oh, dear. And by the way, it gives them a little ammunition against Apple. I'm sure they're not that fond of Apple either.
Well, remember Zuckerberg was getting the Federal Trade Commission to investigate Apple because they were blocking his spyware on it.
And if anything else, if it forces these people to try to figure out how to deliver something that in a way users want to see, users understand that content has to be paid for somehow, and that ads are a really, really friction-free way for them to pay for content without having to actually pay for content. And they want those ads to be relevant to what they're interested in, what they're looking at. People who purchase ads want those ads to be effective. They want to be able to figure out how effective those ads are. So we have we basically have two industries, or two groups of people that there should be a way to compromise between these two. And I think it's a good thing that this wild West idea that no, take any data you want, track anybody anywhere, buy whatever data you want, use it however you want, connect it to each other to fill in whatever gaps you think you need. I think it's a good idea that now we're starting to tamp down on this, and that at least the easy ways of getting access to that data, a company like Apple saying, no, you don't have that data. You don't have access to that. You're gonna have to figure it out some other way. And if it leads, this is the only way that's going to lead to new technologies that come to that kind of a compromise technology where, yes, it's perfectly fine if you understand that I'm actually in the middle, I'm actually trying to replace like a heating system, and I don't know what I'm going to go, but I'm doing a lot of research into what I need to get, what I can do myself, what technology is going to work the best. If there's a way that kind of information simply drops in my lap in a way that helps me solve a problem, I'm interested in that. I just don't want you to look at, okay, so the last time he bought Twinkies was 3 months ago. However, he crossed against the light in this situation, but doesn't do it when he's in Boston. So therefore, we're going to see that's when you get creepy, and that's when you like find a way to do that without violating my trust and my privacy.
Yeah. Let's take a little break, and then we'll talk about why March 8th is an important day in the future. But first, a word from our sponsor, Ihnatko, Rene, Ritchie. It's great to have you. Alex Lindsay has a day off. Our show today brought to you by New Relic. That's a name that should make, if you're a software engineer or a sysadmin, should make your heart go pit-a-pat. I know we love it, and I know many, many, many companies love New Relic because of the 9 p.m. phone call. You know that feeling. You're relaxing. Maybe you have a little adult beverage. You got your feet up. Maybe you're ready to go to bed, and all of a sudden the beeper goes off. The phone buzzes. Something's broken, and guess who has to fix it? And your mind's already going, oh my God, what's wrong? Is it the back end? Is it the front end? Is it global? Is it the server? Is it the network? Is it the cloud provider? Did I introduce a bug in my last deploy? Oh my God. Now you got not just you, but the whole team scrambling. It's 9 in the evening, almost. It's going to be midnight, and everybody's going, what's going on? And unfortunately, there's still a lot of companies where that happens. New Relic did a study. Only half of all organizations have implemented some form of observability for the networks and systems. That means there's half out there who just are in the fog. They'd have no idea, and you just have to kind of try everything. It's really important to maintain network observability, and there is no better way to do it than New Relic. You got to get New Relic to avoid that. Then when you've got New Relic, you get the 9 p.m. call. You look at the monitoring, and you go, oh, yeah, whoops, let's roll that one back, and you're done. New Relic has 16 different monitoring products that you'd normally go out and get separately. So you can see the entire software stack in one place. There's application monitoring, APM, unified monitoring for your apps and your microservices. There's Pixie for Kubernetes. I'm sure if you use Kubernetes, you know about Pixie, right? There's distributed tracing. You can see all your traces without management headaches, so you can find and fix issues fast. There's network performance monitoring, so you'll know exactly where performance issues start. You could ditch those data silos for a system-wide correlated view. New Relic's amazing. That's just 4 of the 16. And when you have an issue, by the way, I love this APM because you can pinpoint issues down to the line of code. It's got the symbol table. It knows exactly why the problem happened. It could say line 43. You got a null pointer, and you could fix it quickly. Or if you're blocking in your database, you could find it right away. That's why devs and op teams at DoorDash and GitHub and Epic Games and so many more rely on New Relic. 14,000 companies use New Relic to debug and improve their software. Whether you run a cloud-native startup or Fortune 500 company, it'll take you just a few minutes to set up New Relic in your environment. And get ready for this. It's free. The whole New Relic platform, plus 100 gigabytes of data a month, free forever. You don't even need to give them a credit card. NewRelic.com/MacBreak. NEWRELIC. I know you know the name. But do you know what a life-changing experience is going to be? Honestly, why are you waiting? That next 9 p.m. call is just out there waiting. Get New Relic before it does. NewRelic.com/MacBreak. We thank them so much for supporting MacBreak Weekly and supporting all you DevOps, sysadmins. Get it solved. NewRelic.com/MacBreak. Thank you, New Relic. There's a kind of convergence of the rumor mongers on March 8th. Rene, I know you're a close observer of all this. Is that credible? Do you think that's the date?
I think right now in the decades of the 2020s, these things can shift. Like it's a pre-recorded virtual presentation. And if anything changes, Apple hasn't announced it. So until we get the ads, until we get the invitations, like the emails, those sorts of things, then it's locked. I think it's early. Typically Apple holds them later in March or June, but the March event moves around so much and there's not always a March event that it's a wild card to me. So yeah, it absolutely could be March 8th, but it could be any week that Apple chooses to hold it.
In other words, they could be right and it could be changed.
Yes.
So
logistics are different. They don't have to rent a building
so
like that has other rental people. Yeah, like Yerba Buena or like
this is why they
Center
built the campus, really, in the Steve Jobs
sort
Theater.
of, but they built it and then they didn't always use it. Like they built it, then they went to Chicago, and then they went to Brooklyn, and then they went to
weird. Well. Yeah. Now, here's the question. Bloomberg, Mark Gurman and others, I think are all saying, and I think this is probably, pretty obvious, new iPhone SE with 5G and the A15 processor, new iPad Air were due. It'll look kind of like the iPad Pros, like the iPad Mini. Anything else is what inquiring minds
look identical,
want to know.
like the iPad Air got its big redesign at the end of 2020, but then the Mini got the same redesign last year, but got the better processor. And I think this is just about leveling that playing field again. So you'll get the A15 and you'll get slightly better camera. So it'll be like the Apple's version of a spec bump, basically. And then the third rumor is for a Mac. It sounds like the iMac Pro has been delayed a little while, or I hate saying delayed for a product that doesn't exist. It feels like that's that Vulcan law, like nothing unreal can exist. It feels like that's not ready yet. So my hopes, my dreams are pinned on a Mac Mini Pro at this point.
That's what my hopes are pinned on too. Do you think it's reasonable though? Or, I mean, why June seems like a more likely target date?
I think June might be the Mac Pro preview, and maybe
they
the
don't
iMac
want to overlap
Pro.
that. Maybe okay, that's interesting.
They could. I mean, I need a new Mac in my life, Leo. That's
the thing. We can't be driven by our desires, Rene.
Mark had a good newsletter on Sunday where he sort of laid out what he thought was reasonable for the Mac roadmap, and I think he's pretty good at that. And that was like a new Mac maybe at this event, and that sounds like that would be the Mac Mini,
but not a
and then
Mac.
the iMac.
Okay, because Digitimes 60.8% accurate, according to Apple Tracker. Digitimes
randomly accurate.
Randomly, in other words, a little better than 50/50. Says it's going to be an M2 based MacBook Pro, which would be a low end which is, by the way, you've explained this many times. It's confusing. The M1 will continue to be the high end as they add more cores, more GPUs. The M2...
More dies even.
More dies, right. You could have like 4 M1 processors. But the M2 is going to be low end initially.
The A15,
because it's based on the A15. So it'll just be an A15. It'll be won't be a spec bump. It'll be a capability.
Faster single core that's more power efficient because it's a cooler chip in general, which is great for but Mark put the M2s, the MacBook Air, MacBook Pro, M2 Mac Mini, and the M2 iMac towards the end of the year. And it starts to get fuzzy whether that would be an A15 M2 or an A60. Like, this is such a deep rabbit hole we could get into.
Well, and Apple should be aware that this is confusing. Like, if you introduce an M2, people are going to think it's better. It's one better.
It'll be, but it's always been that way. Like, again, they put out the A13 iPhone and then they put out the A12Z iPad Pro.
Yeah, but and
that caused the same confusion.
But we weren't so aware. Most people weren't so aware of the designations A13X and all that. But I think M1 and M2 are really big brands. And
they should change the branding. They should call it like Junior or like Air. Like, they should call it M2 Air or M2 Mini. So that people understand it's like a lower end, low power architecture.
And then for people like you, they could say, well, it's an A15. You know what that means. So Mark says at least one new Mac on March 8th, but he isn't sure which it'll be. High-end Mac Mini, which Rene and I are voting for. Not that we have,
which is weird, right? Because it's been decided. Like, they know which one is ready. It's not like that's a mystery. So how come people it's always weird when someone doesn't know something when it's about to happen.
Or he says Apple has at least 4 new Macs powered by M2 chips, but he thinks those will be later in the year, as you said. MacBook Air, that low-end MacBook Pro. It's basically a successor to the original M1 13-inch. There'll be an M2.
Well, so it's the new enclosure, the new 14. Supposedly, it's the new 14-inch enclosure, but with an M2 in it instead of an M1X an M1.
So it will
Pro
be 14, not 13.
Yeah, and they might take a port away from us just to be petulant. Looks that's what they do with the M1.
No port for you. 24-inch iMac, a successor to the colorful iMacs of last year.
Actually, I shouldn't say petulant. It's got if it follows true to form, there's 3 USB and 3 Thunderbolt controllers on the Pro and Max.
It's the issue.
There's only 2 of each.
The chip's controllers is really the issue. It's the capability of the die. All right. I guess all we'll have to do is wait. It's only a couple more. It's a month.
I made a video on this yesterday with an animated timeline, Leo. It was so confusing to me. And I don't do animation a lot. I made a little timeline moving across,
I gotta see this.
dropping little Macs onto it as it went because I needed to figure this out.
I got it. Wait a minute. All right. I'm going to pull this now. Is this the event links one or the?
No, the recent one, the M2
M2 Max leaks super fake renders. Okay.
Yeah, I like making my own super fake renders. But so a little timeline is going to pop up, but because it seems like to me, it should be up in a second.
Oh, okay.
That's my version of Mark typing. That's what I thought Mark typing would be.
Is that stock footage, or do you shoot that?
No, they wouldn't let me shoot Mark typing on a Bloom. So I started making little timelines.
Oh, here's the timeline.
When the different products are.
Oh, look at this.
Yeah, and I fill that in as a video goes.
This is cute. I love it. Smash the subscribe button, man. I love you. You're getting better and better. I tell you,
it's taking me longer to edit now, but I'm putting a lot more work into it.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's the way of the world, right?
But it seems like they might want to get the M1 Pro and M1 Max not out of the way, but they're going to want to release those before they get into M2, because I think it would be even more confusing if M2 starts coming out and M1 Pro and M1 Max haven't finished coming out. Maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe I'm overthinking that.
No, I think this is all we have is overthinking.
And it's not like Intel. Like the Intel transition, all those chips existed. Like Apple just had to go through and choose. And they're Apple, so they're like, we want this and that. But all those chips were done. Apple has to build and scaling a chip is hard. Like taking an M1 and making an M1 Max, that's a lot of work in like just getting the universal memory and the fabric and the memory bandwidth. And doing like quad die is going to take work too, because those dies have to talk to each other in a way that preserves everything that's good about universal memory and massive bandwidth to begin with. So it is a non-trivial amount of work. But then once that's all done, incrementing them, I think, is it's more of a marathon and less of a sprint.
Andy, any thoughts? What are you voting for? As if our vote matters.
Yeah, I know.
Andy's God mode.
I kind of imagine this as being kind of a low key event. Like let's fill in, let's improve what's already there, particularly in the iPad range. What are people going to need to be buying in bulk, like in March and April? And usually you think about people who are buying things in readiness for September and October. So you're talking about bulk purchases for education. So that really points very heavily to a lot of iPad updates. I'm still very mystified as to like where Apple is going to go, like in the Pro line. I mean, I don't mean in the Pro chips. I mean that the traditional line of here is the Pro Max. Here are the ones that we're trying to get as much performance as possible out of this thing, and do a little bit of a flex if we can. For people who have $10,000, we will make sure that you have a very, very happy and very, 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 very well ducted fan experience. Are they going to try to find the limits of what they can do with the iPad mini case and have that be sort of like the aspirational mid-level Mac, meaning that you can buy one for as little as $600? That's very strategically kitted out. But if you wanted to check off all the boxes on the website, you can buy a $3,000 to $4,000 build that is just an absolute screamer. Nice. Or are they going to want to start to steer those people towards an actual Mac Pro? And there was some rumors, rumors bordering on speculation last year about like a Mac Pro Mini. I don't know whether people were talking about that, who feel as though they had access to information. We're talking about a high-spec Mac Mini, or actually let's take a Mac Pro, huge, like $900 caster wheels Mac Pro, but also make a smaller cut version of this that is more affordable, more portable, more accessible. I don't know where they're going to go with this. I wouldn't have even bet money on them doing an iMac Pro, given that the original one was kind of a stopgap when they saw how much of a failure the cylindrical Mac Pro was, where they had to get something out that would actually work, that developers would actually be able to use for their work. So I always thought that the iMac Pro was a stopgap that may or may not even survive the Apple Silicon transition.
Interesting. I have the iMac
My understanding
Pro,
is that
$5,000, and it's really aged poorly. It's not.
Some people still love it, but like my understanding is that the iMac Pro isn't like a successor to the original iMac Pro, just that whatever they put the M1 Pro and M1 Max chip in is going to get Pro in the name, like MacBook Pro, iMac Pro, Mac Mini Pro. It'll be like a unification of branding more than like a spiritual successor. Well, some people are panicking going, I want a bigger iMac, but I don't want a Pro. And like, that'll be fine. You'll be okay. It's going to have that name.
So even if it has an M1 Max in it, it'll still be a Pro.
Yeah, can you imagine iMac Max? Like if they took it to the extent of the phones,
you can't do the Max. Yeah.
How much Max can you max out a Max of a Max could be maxed? It's just
so a Pro or a Max is a Max.
Mad Max
is a Pro.
Yeah,
yeah.
But that would be new if they decided that. I like the logic of that kind of nomenclature, but that would be a new extension of the brand. So you've never had a Mac Mini has always been a Mac Mini. Maybe you can afford to fill it up with lots of money. Maybe you could just simply get the case with as little functional stuff as you can. AM radio, no factory air, roll up windows. The idea of having a Mac Mini Pro, that's tantalizing. Like, would they have to create a new tooling for a case? Would they have to simply say, we're gonna make a Mac Mini nothing that is even smaller, even more compact, even easier to hide on a desk or mount on the back of a screen? But when we make the Mac Mini Pro, we're gonna make that twice as thick so that you can pop off the top and add new SSD storage. You can make modifications to it as you need.
Well, as long as we're speculating
it'll be colors, Andy. Yeah, it'll be colorfuls for the regulars and then black and white.
I also think that because Apple now makes a display again, the XDR, and maybe we'll be making more, maybe they'll see the iMac as more for the style-conscious consumer, and not. I agree with you, maybe Andy, that the Pro was a stopgap and not a planned future, and that assume the Pro is going to want a Mac Pro or a Mac Mini Pro. The problem is if they do the shrunken
iMac Pro,
if they do the shrunken Mac Pro, as some have rumored, which is awfully cute, it'll verge into mini territory, won't it?
So it's less shrunken, and it's mostly just taking out those giant Xeon and giant RMNA cards. Those that reduces the size immensely. So I think like when people talk about it being smaller, it's just smaller because it doesn't have those two shield helicarriers.
They could be a lot smaller.
Anymore.
Those things are
they're massive. When you look at the open picture, it's like 1/3 the size.
Yeah. So you really
the power might stay the same because you could put 4 like in a 300 watt enclosure. You could, that's my other question. Like you could put 4 M1 Maxes in there and still not fill up that thermal envelope. But the interesting thing is like an iMac Pro with an M1 Max would have 64 gigabytes of storage, but the previous iMac Pro had 256 gigabytes. The Mac Pro was 1.5 terabytes of storage max. Like how does Apple scale any of that? And like to your point, how do they address PCIe expansion slots? Like that's never been a thing with Apple Silicon.
Well, now that you don't have to do graphics cards, you're not going to have RAM slots because they're all on die. I think they're not expandable. I think, but what are you going to put in there? That is
some of the iPads had off-package RAM. Like I think the X chips, the extended chips, did have off-package RAM. So does Apple have like an ugly or a brilliant interface that lets you put in off-package RAM if you need it for like a giant project? And then do you have like a RAID card that you can put in there that interfaces with
that makes
Apple
sense.
Silicon?
There are, I'm thinking of what kinds of pro applications, and there certainly are machine learning applications that require giant amounts of RAM, and you might want to be willing to do off-board RAM, but that's such a specialized thing you wouldn't necessarily want to manufacture.
Some studios, like some of the higher-end 3D stuff, a lot of rendering. There's a lot of high-end stuff. Yeah. Alex's photogrammetry.
Yeah.
So and analysts who are doing science and analysts who are doing like massive data sets.
Yeah,
I've always my hope for transition for the product line has always been, I think that there's like my ideal would be that there would be a desktop Mac Pro where the difference between the two is that one has PCIe slots, one does not, but it has like M.2 for SSDs, and you can have a couple of SSDs in there.
The world has changed a lot,
upgradability
since the Mac Pro, but you don't have to put in SATA drives. You don't. So you really could still be fairly compact and fairly expandable. And I wonder if pros are willing to hang stuff off of Thunderbolt 4. Like that's pretty fast.
Well, I mean, there also could be a Xeon and a Navi 3 Mac Pro that tied us over for another year while Apple gets this ultra high end.
Really?
There's been rumors of that too. There's been rumors that they're going to keep an Intel one around for another 2 years. Remember, like the people on production pipelines work slowly. Like Pixar and ILM, like work on a different schedule.
Yeah, they don't care, and they probably don't want to have to recompile for ARM.
But how would that affect didn't they do a hard promise that we're going to have the Apple Silicon transition complete by the end of 2022?
So you get the M1 Max Mac Pro, but then there'd still also be an updated, like they make basically just a press release that says now the old Mac Pro comes with the latest Xeon and Navi 3 chipsets.
I think you're right. I think they will do that because there certainly is a market for that. I mean, Pro Tools is still running.
It gives them some breathing room to get like the really, really high power Apple, so like the really crazy high power Silicon out.
Yeah, I think that may very well be.
I still, my head still spins when I think about it. Imagine Apple Silicon that requires massive cooling. Like imagine they said, screw it, we're gonna have like water cooled systems. We're gonna have like Skynet like power.
Well, there were rumors about a vapor chamber for A16 because like the A15 with the 5th GPU core inside an iPhone Pro does ramp down really fast if you put it under load. Not many things put it under load, but if you do like your Genshin Impact benchmarks, it will throttle down.
Sure, but that's a package the size of a Hershey bar.
Yes.
Wow. You know, it's really
Cadbury
interesting.
Bar, here, Leo.
We get really engaged when we talk about Macs. And I know Mac is a fraction of Apple's business and revenue. But we do call the show MacBreak Weekly, and us old timers, we love our Macs. And it's not, I mean, I guess we can say, let's see, iPad rumor, OLED. LG seems to be ramping up production for OLED screens for the iPad.
Yeah, it's hard because like a lot of the publications that push out those rumors are industry rags in Korea that really do manipulate, that's the wrong word for it, but they're like advocacy for Samsung and LG, and they do a lot of the backroom dealings in public. Like posturing, is that the right word for it? They do a lot of posturing on behalf of the local OLED industry. I think they might transition, but Apple likes to make things fight, like almost like gladiatorial combat, and they're going to let mini LED has problems, OLED has problems. Right now, mini LED doesn't have as many problems on a larger display because the OLED processes are so different, like from TV set to phone to tablet. Phones are handled. Like there's so many mitigations you need to make OLED non-terrible. But when you do them, OLED is fantastic. It's just when you go to tablet size, it's harder yield, it's more expensive, and it gets blotchy because the highlights don't stay consistent. But if they could solve for that, they'll be better than mini LED again. And I think Apple's more that like they don't care. They just want the best display. So they're happy to let them fight it out. Yeah,
that's why these rumors make are more impressive when they come from a display supply chain analyst as opposed to an industry group. Because as Rene says, it's very, very positive to make not even just to know that to put out the rumor that this factory is going to get a big contract from Apple, but even that this country is going to get this contract for Apple. So there's a lot of wink, wink, nudge, nudge there.
A little bit of concern over an Apple patent published last week showing that Apple's working on touch controls for the AirPods Max. Patently, Apple has the patent, but a lot of folks love that little, and I do too, and I'm one of the few who actually spent $550 on this headphones. But I do
that
like
was a workaround to begin with. Like that was because they couldn't get other stuff working, so they went to that.
The winding stem.
Like this isn't new, yeah.
They borrowed from the Apple Watch. I love it. You tap it, you turn it, it's smooth, it feels good. But I guess touch makes more sense. It's probably easier to manufacture.
Well, they're going to want to patent it regardless. Like they're going to, I think touch was the original idea for it. And then they had, like, it wasn't going to work the way they wanted it to. So they went to this, but the people working on it are still working on it. They're going to patent everything that they can.
Sure.
For reasons Andy explained well last time. It's just like, that's the war chest.
But sometimes a workaround is the right thing. I mean, I like the dial.
Especially on headphones, because one of the problems I've always had with like true wireless earbuds is that they're so small that even when I'm just walking, I just feel it getting a little bit loose, so I just want to reseat a little bit, and then unfortunately I've just activated the assistant, right? So, and I realized that there's on a tiny earbud there are very little choices you have to design, but when you come to the larger ones, I like the ability to be able to do this without having to pause something, without having to change the volume, and there's something, and when it's something that you can't actually see, when you're not actually looking at it, there is something to that tactile thing where I feel around till I feel this bump. I know that I feel the neural grip, and I know that if I twist it this way, this is going to happen. If I twist it that way, it's going to happen. If I push it until I feel a click, that's going to happen. It's a non-obvious solution.
I have to admit though, because I mostly wear those headphones during conference calls. I don't know why, but I just like the noise canceling. And people laugh because I have pink ones, so it lightens the room up. But I have to say,
the bunny ears. I think they're throwing.
Yeah, right. I have to say, tapping that digital crown will hang up the phone call in many cases, and I often inadvertently do that. I'm kind of famous at the company now for just disappearing from phone calls, and that's why. So,
and you forgot to say, "Oh, I'm going into a tunnel. We might be discussed."
Yeah,
but you have the Hello Kitty ears on the top, Leo.
I should
put the Hello Kitty.
We got those when they were all the rage. We got them for Michael. He was too embarrassed to wear them, even in private. Good news for Apple. The Academy Award nominations came out this morning, and actually, it's good news for streaming in general. Huge number of streaming nominations. I think this is for the first time ever, but Apple has, for the first time ever, received a Best Picture nomination for CODA, which is the Marlee Matlin movie about a predominantly deaf family with one hearing kid. I haven't seen it yet, but Best Supporting Actor nomination for Troy Kotsur. First time a deaf male actor has gotten an Oscar nomination. Marlee Matlin obviously has hers and has won. Best Screenwriter, Joel Coen's Tragedy of Macbeth, 3 nominations. Yep. Best Cinematography, Best Production Design, and Denzel Washington got a Best Actor nomination. I wonder if all the streaming nominations have more to do with COVID and the fact that movie theaters are kind of closed, and if it'll all revert back to something else, or if this is a trend.
Maybe it's just a meritocracy. I don't think that's true, but I'd love for that to be the case.
So cool, yeah, because these are great.
It's just the quality that counts.
These are all really great. I saw Power of the Dog, and I told Lisa, I said, Lisa, this is going to get a ton of nominations. Both of us were kind of scratching our heads at the end. But because it's Jane Campion, yes, 12 12 categories. Yeah. But let's talk about streaming. Netflix, 27 nominations, combining with Apple TV Plus and Amazon for a total of 40 streamer nominations. Don't Look Up, which is the Netflix movie, nominated for Best Picture. So a really change of pace. Dune got nominated. King Richard, both from HBO, were on HBO Max, but did go to movie theaters as well.
Yeah, the streaming channels are at a competitive advantage, believe it or not, simply because the sort of movies that get awards tend to not to be the $300-400 million blockbusters. They are the quiet movies that cost less than $100 million to make, that attract screenwriters, attract directors, attract actors. And before COVID, before streaming really got that next leap forward, it became the news on lots of different like industry sites was that it's just almost it's easy to make a movie for like less than 20 million. It's easy to make a movie for more than 200 million. It's these dramatic movies in the middle that have a problem, and these are exactly the sort of things that Apple and Netflix and the rest like to fund. Although I'd love to see if the next quarterly, if some sort of future quarterly statement, Apple actually talks about how much money they spend on Oscar and awards campaigns, because this is not, you don't just simply release the movie and then hope that you get recognized in February. This is like an expensive campaign. Oftentimes in the contracts with these creators and these actors, it is contractually, it's part of their contract that you will support, you will bankroll an Oscar campaign to try to get this nominated, and if it's nominated, you will also support the campaign to get a win. So it's interesting to figure out that the same building that houses people that are trying to figure out how to make the next generation of 5G antennae work into this tiny device. There's also an office where it's trying to figure out how to convince somebody that, okay, yeah, I know that he was on Saturday Night Live 3 seasons ago and he got fired for drugs, but I'm telling you, his supporting actor performance in this is, you'll never believe it.
Yeah. And I'm sure Micah wants me to mention that Queen Bee got her first Oscar nomination, Beyonce. I didn't realize this. But EGOT. I didn't know this, but apparently no streaming-only movie has ever won a Best Picture. But there are a great many in this list of nominees. It'd be interesting if this year is the first year a streaming.
The Academy, just out of bias, says no. We shall not vote for those filthy streamers.
Remember, Steven Spielberg said no streaming movie should ever be nominated for an Oscar. Movies mean theaters, but that's really changed in the last 2 years.
Well, part of his justification was also that a streaming movie has an advantage in that every single Academy voter has access to it from day one and can see it on demand from day one, whereas they're going to have to wait for a 2-week period in which they're actually made available, or send out a DVD, send out a Blu-ray, send out a streaming code and hope that they watch it.
Yeah.
Maybe they watch it and hate it.
Power of the Dog was Netflix only, so and probably the front runner. So it'd be very interesting. 12 categories, including Best Picture. But good go on Apple getting its first Best Picture nomination with CODA. Now I have to watch it.
Yeah.
And have either of you seen it? No.
I haven't seen CODA, but it was on my list.
Oh, I've seen CODA, yes.
Oh, you have? Was it good?
Yeah, CODA's excellent.
I guess
it's amazing.
Good, right?
It's remarkable, yeah.
Yeah. I'm glad Dune won some nominations, too. I thought Dune was quite good.
Yes, me too.
Yeah. Although Denis Villeneuve did not get a nod for Best Director, which is
anti-Canadian. Some
thought was inappropriate. I think they need a new category for Best Fake Italian Accent, because then Jared Leto and Lady Gaga could in fact get their nomination for House of Gucci. They were not nominated, surprisingly. Good fake
Best
Italian
Fuji production,
accent.
is that not a category?
Oh my God, they sounded like this the whole time. It was
it's a me.
It's a me, man. It's a me.
Both Italian.
It was hysterical. It's like, I've never seen anything quite like it. Plus, Leto's wearing a 40-pound fat suit, so he deserves definitely. And
then he goes from that to Mobius. The man's torturing himself.
By the way, they did get
Joker
nominated for best makeup, so that's kind of appropriate. All right, I think that's there's your Hollywood news, ladies and gentlemen. I used to be such a big fan of the Academy Awards.
Me too.
And it's kind of lost its luster, hasn't it? I think.
Yeah, I mean, when I was like in my 20s and 30s, I would like write 10,000 words.
We'd have
Like,
parties.
what I thought. Well, not me. To me, it was like what I thought about each movie, what I thought about their chances, what I thought about and I know it's not 80% because that was a silly thing to have done. It's just simply a movie. But it used to be more of a.
No, it's a great art form. What are you talking about? In fact, I'm going to say this again. It's the original virtual reality because you really get, even though you're in a darkened theater with music and other people and there's a screen, you're not wearing a helmet, you are transported by these things.
But they cared more about concession revenue than they cared about experience.
Well, that's true. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm talking more about like being that serious, not about the movies, but about the Oscars.
Yeah. No,
like,
I was
always super serious about the movies, and so I would talk.
They never
about
nominated Jackie Chan, so I had a disconnect.
True.
It's funny. It used to be one of the big events of the year. We'd have a party. We'd have people over. We'd have food. We'd have Oscar ballots.
It was your Super Bowl.
It was a Super Bowl kind of. And it's just lost its luster. And then the Golden Globes, which was also great fun because everybody was smashed, didn't even bother this year.
Yeah, it turned out that went problematic real fast. Who could have guessed?
Yeah.
I still haven't gotten over Juliette Binoche beating Lauren Bacall. Okay, I'm sorry.
Oh, wow.
I mean, that was
really
your opportunity.
Okay, you win.
He should have used a computer chess program to help her win.
All right, little break. Then we are going to get your picks of the week. So I don't know, what is it that you have to do for pick of the week? Warm them up. Gentlemen, start your engines.
Pick your weeks.
Get those tires heated up. get the downforce. Sorry, good.
No, I love it. I watch the F1 and they get to go and doing the zigzag in the warm up lap. I love that. It's hysterical just to get the tires hot. Let's kick off our picks of the week this week with Rene Ritchie.
So it brings me great joy to make this pick because there was a lot of stress and anxiety over apps increasingly going subscription.
Yes.
And some people felt like it was just subscription fatigue or endless. And I just chose very carefully which apps I wanted to support and which ones I thought would provide ongoing value. And so the new Fantastical update, which I believe landed today, is exactly the kind of thing that I thought is the best result of going to subscription, because now you have really talented, really creative, really adept, smart, considerate people who have like the ability to sustain their apps, but also to keep working on their apps. And they just announced a new feature for Fantastical where it's not new. Like, people have been able to do appointment matching for a while. So basically you could say, Leo, Andy, we need to have a talk. These are the times that I'm available. Which one suits you best? And everybody can figure out a time that works for them. I mean, it was just the result of a huge sarcastic thread on Twitter a couple of weeks ago about, whether you're important enough to have a calendar or something. But this is really so well thought out. It's localized. It's not cloud. Data lives on your device. It lives in your Fantastical install, but it's shared through Fantastical's service so that it knows what if you want to, it's optional. You can choose to share your availability. And then people who want to have meetings with you can go in and choose that availability and populate sort of those meetings. And you can come very quickly to a time that suits everybody. And it's done with typical sort of stylistic, artistic flair like Fantastical does. And they've got a bunch of other little quality of life improvements there. Like, you can look at quarterly views, and if you're trying to look at a specific date and there's nothing there, it'll tell you there's nothing there, but then automatically collapse that down. So you're not scrolling through endlessly, no event days. So it's a really thoughtful, really good update, and just another one in a long series of updates that I think personally Fantastical is providing ongoing value to me. So I'm really happy about that.
Yay. Well, it did just come out today because as soon as you started talking about it, I checked and I just got it. I just downloaded it. You don't have to have, so I could send a meeting invitation to somebody. They don't have to have Fantastical.
No, yeah.
All they have to do is say, here's my available times, and that Fantastical will mediate that, just like Calendly does and others.
And then they'll get an invite, and whatever software they're using will handle that invite.
Nice. So a lot of exclamation marks in the change log.
That's Michael Simmons.
Openings is what we were talking about, is the openings feature. You have to enable it, so I'm going to do that, and then you go to hub.flexibits.com. So do you have to have a subscription account for this? I guess so. This is one of the
this feature,
new features. Yeah. There's also proposals, which lets you propose to your loved
suggest
one
times
to be a wife.
Suggest times for things.
Okay, suggest times.
Yeah.
Okay. Although you could suggest that we get married on Thursday.
That'd be a very romantic way of doing it. Do
you have an opening?
It's Mac, iPad, iPhone as well, which is a nice thing too, is that they're rolling all these features across all the devices at once.
And then now they've added something which is kind of interesting, which is a quarter view. So they had day, week, month. You should see my quarter view. It's a little busy.
That's quite a quarter, Laporte.
That's quite a quarter I got planned here. But that's kind of cool.
This is my nickel and dime view.
Yeah. You could see 3 months at a time. So, and then there's some enhancements to list view. Good job, Fantastical. I, like you, have chosen to support FlexiBits. I love their work, and I'm very happy to subscribe to this, which I've always had a paid version, but I'm very happy to subscribe to it. Fantastical 3.6 available now. Mac as well, iPad as well, and iPhone as well.
And iPhone as well, yeah.
Mr. Andy Ihnatko pick of the week, sir.
I don't know if you were paying attention to social media, but apparently people are upset with Spotify over one of their creators, one of those bad apples who's reading. But if you're switching from Spotify to Apple Music, or really any music service to any other music service, or even if, like me, you can't really pick one service and you kind of maintain a couple, it's a pain in the butt to take all of your favorited albums, all of your playlists, all of your likes and everything, and transfer them from one service to another. So I was using SongShift, which is it's an app that you install on your iPhone or iPad. It costs $5 a month or $20 a year. Excuse me, that can't be right. There's a pro plan and there's a free plan, and it's good for there you go, $20 a month or $5 for 1 month, which is what you would use if you're saying I'm leaving Spotify behind forever. I'm moving to Apple Music. I'm committing completely.
Because you probably wouldn't use this over and over again, or would you?
Well, if you would, again, I kind of want to have a couple of different services.
Oh
for silly reasons.
Yeah.
And it does have neat features where it's not just one shoot, transfer everything from one place to another. You can also just simply say, take this one playlist and keep it synchronized from one service to another, and it will routinely check and go. One of the things I do like about it, as opposed to some of these other services, is that it doesn't necessarily trust that it's making the right selections. So when it does a song match, you can actually review what it thinks it's matched from Spotify to Apple Music, or to Amazon Music, or to YouTube, or to Deezer, or to whatever, and it will make sure that it'll get your verification before you go ahead. And so this is one of the biggest pain points of streaming music services. I think a lot of people will stick with Spotify just because this is like 5, 6, 7, 10 years worth of acquired experience and knowledge that you've basically embedded inside this one service. And the idea of starting all over again and trying to rebuild your music library someplace else is you'd have to be a lot more offensive than Joe Rogan to get a lot of people to make that switch. But an app like this makes it really, really easy. So you really are free to decide that why am I sticking with Spotify when I don't get high resolution music, I don't get 3D music, I don't get the parts of this library that Apple just acquired. It makes it frictionless. You understand why we're talking about regulations internationally across the world, why data portability is a big part of the digital bill of rights that a lot of countries are trying to promote. That the idea that you can't kind of trick people into keeping paying for your service just because you're making it so difficult for them to move to competitors. And it sucks that you have to spend $5 to get this thing that you should probably be able to have built in for free, but nonetheless it is a solution and it'll work great. So if you just want to transfer, sign up for $5 a month and cancel after you've done the thing you want to do. But for $20 a month, you might want to, if you want to spend
$20 a year.
I'm sorry, for $20 a year, you might want to keep it going just to sample other services and see which one you settle into.
Yeah. In fact, I'm adding all my services right now because I immediately signed up, and I'm going to pay for it $40 for the one time only, because I have so many. I foolishly run many, many services. It's nice. This actually works with Pandora too, where I have a lot of data.
They added a new service, a new feature kind of recently, where if you want to share a playlist with somebody else, you don't necessarily have to anticipate that they've used the exact same service you do. Even if you don't subscribe to Spotify, but you want a Spotify friend to use this playlist you made in Apple Music, you can just basically, it's called SongShare, meaning it will figure out what the equivalent Spotify playlist would be, and then send a link to that to your friend.
I just bought that too. $1.99. That seems fair. That's really cool. Yeah. So I guess these services must have an API, unless they're figured out how to scrape it. That's interesting.
Yeah, it's hard to know when you start looking into these things. You see a lot of things that are like, okay, first of all, open Spotify on the web, open the developer pane, paste the following JavaScript code into the and there's a lot of stuff that you can fix by doing that, but a lot of this is super sketchy. And as you say, if they change the API or if they change anything, it's going to stop working, or worse, do things you don't anticipate it to do. So I don't know exactly how it does what it does, but it does. I've been using it for a while now, and it's a very good consumer level. It just push a button, you tell it what to do, it'll do it exactly as you expected it to do.
I am signing into all of the dozens of well, but that's a professional hazard, right? Because I have to kind of check out all these different services.
LimeWire, Napster.
Yeah. A lot of stuff's on here. Not interestingly. Well, I guess everything I want is on here. There are some oddball services that might not be.
Yeah.
But there's also some oddball services that are, like Qobuz and Hype Machine and Discogs.
Yeah. The only thing I wish that it doesn't have that I wish it had was support for Plex. Because I would love it if I could just simply create, if I could have a playlist of music that I actually own as files, and it could simply replicate that on Apple Music, without my having to do all this stuff manually. I have yet to find a really, really good solution for doing track matching. If you have a physical media, physical files that are on a server that you control, but you also want to have the ability to simply stream it elsewhere without having to keep a copy of your entire music database in the cloud somewhere.
I'm signing into, it's taken me forever, but I'm signing into all these services.
A lot of fingerprint touches.
Holy cow. Yeah, there's a lot of Face ID going on here. Hey, I wanted to mention, it's just a sweet story. But if you were a fan of Joe Danger, which was one of the early runner games on iOS, Joe Danger has been relaunched, and the story is great. This is from 9 to 5 Mac. So Sean Murray, who did No Man's Sky, which is an amazing game, is relaunching something he did earlier called Joe Danger. He made the announcement on Twitter. Joe Danger is relaunching on iOS today. A secret shame of ours is that the success of No Man's Sky left our first game, Joe Danger, unloved. Sadly, since iOS culled older games, it no longer worked on the latest Apple devices. And then he refers to a mail he received that broke our hearts and made us want to set things right. Hello, the email goes, my name is Redacted. I'm a Redacted from Redacted, and I'm writing this letter on behalf of my son, Jack. Jack's 8 years old, is about the sweetest kid on the planet, and has been diagnosed with autism. As you probably know, children with autism deal with a great many struggles. Chief among them are a great difficulty with social interactions. However, one of the things that has enabled Jack and us to bond is our shared love of video games, specifically Joe Danger. Jack loves Joe. He loves everything about him. He has a collection of toy motorcycles that are his Joe Dangers. Every motorcycle we see on the street is Joe Danger. One of the first things I hear every day when I walk in the door after a long day at work is, "Come on, Daddy, let's go play Joe Danger." Just being able to say that sentence is a massive deal for a child with autism. Joe Danger has allowed Jack to interact and have fun with friends and family alike. Now is the part where we ask for help. Not only has Joe Danger helped Jack with friends, it's become an important coping mechanism, but the iPhone version of Joe Danger, since iOS was updated, hasn't worked with the newer versions, and one isn't even able to find it in the App Store anymore. So it's a longer letter, which I highly recommend. John Gruber discovered.
I'm not crying, you're crying.
I know. It's beautiful, but what's even more beautiful is that Joe Danger's back. And I hope both the kid
long may he ride.
Yeah, long may he ride. It's actually, I downloaded, there's a 2-pack where you can get both Joe Danger games, and I downloaded them both, Joe Danger and Joe Infinity, and they're really a lot of fun. It's a great little game. Yeah. So I think it might be a good thing for everybody to go out and support the work of this company, bringing it back, you know. and you'll enjoy it, I think.
That's part of the shame of the way that games are distributed right now. If you can imagine a movie that's a classic movie that has just been groundbreaking for its artistry and its innovation, but it was made in a special format that can only be played on a special projector that was made between 1944 and 1948. And now it just simply doesn't exist anymore, except for in our imagination, because it just simply doesn't exist anymore. And that's what we're dealing with. We're having generations of kids are having experiences with online games that they can have long conversations about that they would love to tell their kids about it sometime in the future. But because it was a server-based game and because they pulled the plug on that server, it just doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
So
it's actually
the closest we have are TV shows with rights issues that just can't be published on DVD or streaming. And I remember them and I want to see them again.
And that's why I actually kind of I don't support piracy, but I think that you have to acknowledge that there is a role that piracy actually provides. You think about how it sounds silly to think about 100 years in the future, but Americans in 100 years are entitled to have free copies of The Mandalorian. They're entitled to be able to see all of the stuff, share it, create their own versions of The Mandalorian, remix it, because that's when copyright expires. And the deal that the government makes is that you get protection from the government for a period of time, but then you give it away. And what's going to happen if Disney says, oh, well, gee, to do that, we would have to actually remove it from our protected servers and actually release it. That sounds like something that we don't want to do, and so we're just not going to want to do it. And that's when, but they can't stiff us that way, because there are people who they're brave patriots who are pirating The Mandalorian and making sure that it's on Usenet and other cycles, so that when the time comes, there will be copies of this available.
Well, if you want to support it, because I really think that this is very important, Internet Archive at archive.org is taking that stand, saying, look, we're preserving stuff, even if it's still on copyright, but stuff that is no longer playable. You can boot an old Mac on here and play and do HyperCard and all sorts of things. And I think a lot of people know about the Wayback Machine, but the Internet Archive is much more than that. And they do
arcade games, console games, they're all being protected.
They're preserving
I'm going to say very, very quickly that the only way that you can see the original version, the original released version of Star Wars Episode 4: A New Hope, before all the changes and upgrades were made to it, and see it in 4K in a really good print, is to get a pirated version of it, because a whole bunch of people decided that, gee, if we get a whole bunch of these like illegal release prints like that were toured the country a million times and all scratched up, if we get like 9 or 10 of these together, we could composite each frame together to make a perfect 4K frame, do all the color correction, do all the fixing, and it's gorgeous. It is like the most beautiful thing ever. It is 10 times better than whatever you might have seen in the late 70s. And until like Disney/Lucasfilm figures out what they want to do, there's such a long story about whether or not that's even legally possible for them to do. At least this thing still exists, and at 2077, I will be able to like leave. I will be able to leave a video to like my great nieces, say, "Now I want you to watch this movie. It was really awesome, and then I wanted to wear a Han Solo vest because it was so cool."
Yeah.
Han shot first. Don't believe the lies, child.
I can prove it. I've got the film. Archive.org. Absolutely a great place to go to find all of this stuff. And I think that they're surviving any legal challenges, but they certainly accept donations, because it's not an inexpensive project.
Seriously, some of the most fun you will have is going through those archives, because you will never believe the stuff that you find there. Again, if there's a preponderance of doubt as to whether or not maybe this rights have not been claimed, so we're going to assume it's okay. I think they actually have a carve out saying that they're not going to get sued into oblivion for assuming that something is archivable and making it available. I'd have to look up, have to follow up on that. But yeah, it's weird. Like, wait a minute, but that's an actual movie that really was released in 1982. Oh, yeah. How can they put that up there? Say, well, because nobody claimed it and nobody wants it, and it's not on DVD, and someone had a VHS and decided, guess what? You get to see the Tonight Show for these 3 months. Okay, I'll take it.
And credit to Brewster Kahle too, who sold his company to AOL, made a lot of money, and could have gone on and become, a Mark Cuban, but instead decided to plow that money into the Internet Archive and to do everything he could to save the internet. And he's now got 99 petabytes of data, 625 billion web pages, 38 million books and texts, 14 million audio recordings. It has become, like Wikipedia, it's one of the great jewels of the internet. And it reminds me that I've got to up my monthly contribution to them because they're really great. We are out of time, but it was a lot of fun, boys and girls. Well, there's no girls here. That was a lot of fun, boys. Andy Ihnatko, when are you going to be on GBH next?
I'm off this week, but I'm on next week at the usual time, Friday at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time. You can stream it live or later at wgbhnews.org. Or if you miss me this week, you can just check out past high-tech Heidi-Ho's that I've done, news roundups.
Heidi-Ho. You don't actually say. It'd be a good trademark for you. Heidi-Ho, kids.
I keep working on GBH there. I've encountered some resistance, but I persevere.
You need everybody needs a trademark. Heidi-Ho.
I just want the jingle. Time for Andy Ihnatko's high-tech Heidi-Ho.
Ding, ding. Deal. Rene Ritchie. Rene Ritchie's on YouTube at youtube.com/Rene Ritchie. Now with animated timelines. What are you working on next?
I've been doing a series of things about the future of technology, is the things like Apple could do to go beyond Bluetooth or to go beyond Lightning. And I'm working on one about going beyond active biometric authentication into a more passive, ambient is the right term, form of authentication. So I'm working on that for tomorrow, I hope.
Very nice. Well, thank you, gentlemen. We do MacBreak Weekly of a Tuesday, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern. That's 1900 UTC. I say the time so you can watch it live if you want to at live.twit.tv. If you're watching live chat with us live, you can either use the free IRC chat room, irc.twit.tv. That, by the way, works with web browsers as well as IRC clients. If you're a member of Club Twit, there's a Discord as well, and the Discord's always a lot of fun. In fact, I want to encourage you to join Club Twit. That has become an important revenue source for us during COVID, and I think going forward, it's also allowed us to do new shows in audio that we would maybe not have done as a podcast, like the Untitled, although it is the Ultimate Linux Show. It's Untitled. We have a new show that is debuting on the Club feed, This Week in Space with Rod Pyle. We also, of course, have Stacy's Book Club, and there's Ask Me Anythings. I think Mike Elgin and Amir Elgin are going to join me at Ask Me Anything next week. Really a lot of fun. $7 a month gives you ad-free versions of all the shows. Because you're supporting us, we don't need to put the ads in, which is very nice. You also get access to the Discord and the Twit Plus feed with all the bonus content. Twit.tv/ClubTwit if you'd like to know more. After the fact, all of our shows are available for free. You don't have to be a member. Ad-supported at the website, twit.tv. For this show, it's twit.tv/MBW. You can also subscribe in your favorite podcast player. That way you'll get it automatically the minute it's available of a Tuesday afternoon. And if your podcast device allows reviews, please leave us a 5-star review. Let the world know about the longest running Mac podcast. That was one, maybe there is something that's been going longer than 17 years, but I don't know. It seems like an awful long time. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. And for 17 years, I've been saying, now get back to work because, yes, I'm sorry, break time is over. Bye-bye.
Is that an iPhone in your hand? Wait a second. Is that an Apple Watch on your wrist? And do I see an iPad sitting there on the table? Oh my goodness. You are the perfect person to be watching iOS Today, the show where Rosemary Orchard and I, Micah Sargent, talk all things iOS, tvOS, watchOS, HomePod OS. It's all the OSs that Apple has on offer, and we show you how to make the most of those gadgets. Just head to twit.tv/iOS to check it out.